Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. There are two things that we are going to take up for discussion in today's show. Firstly, in the wake of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf protests, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shah Sharif has chaired the cabinet meeting in which he has made very important statements. I'll be quoting a number of statements made by Prime Minister. Secondly, we are going to discuss the situation as it is developing in the Middle East. We know for a fact there has been a ceasefire agreed between the resistance group Hezbollah and Israeli regime. Number of other important issues on that particular front to be discussed with our panelists. Let's talk about this particular important meeting of Prime Minister Shah Sharif in the wake of that PTI protest. Chair of the cabinet saying law enforcement agencies adopted appreciable strategy, and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf protest caused serious damage to local economy as well. The Prime Minister went on to say that local businessmen faced utmost difficulties due to this protest. Life in the twin cities remained paralyzed for many days. The stock exchange also suffered heavily due to the unjustified protest. PTI leadership has become enemy of the national economy, and such situation destroys confidence of the investors. The Prime Minister further said, our political history never saw such violent protests before the year 2014. The Prime Minister further said, PTI propagated the culture of violent protests in Pakistan. PTI leadership plans protests to cause dent to our foreign relationships. PTI planned to sabotage SCO meeting in Islamabad last month. The Prime Minister said Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf brings armed miscreants in the guise of the protesters. He went on to say that we will have to take tough decisions for the sake of our economy. The Prime Minister also said we cannot afford to spend valuable money to counter these protests. He also said our delegation will visit Belarus soon. We know for a fact that a high-level delegation from Belarus, led by its President Alexander Lukashenko, has visited Pakistan for a three-day state visit in which a number of MOUs and agreements were signed and deliberated and signed between the two sides, giving us a picture of how the two sides reaffirmed more cooperation in the future ahead. Regarding these protests, the Prime Minister also said that those behind May 9 incident must have been given strict punishment, and also the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government should have laid focus on law and order situation in Kuram agency. Regarding the bilateral relationship with Belarus, the Prime Minister added that we will sign MOUs with the government of Belarus in coming months also, and it is high time to set our direction right. So this was an important cabinet meeting that was chaired by Prime Minister Shah Sharif in the wake of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf led protests, owing to which people saw many problems in the last couple of days. We'll continue with the second topic that we have to discuss in today's show. But here I have to take a very quick short break. After that, we'll be resuming the discussion from there. Hello and welcome back to Views on News. The situation as it is developing in the Middle East, we know for a fact there has been an agreement of a ceasefire between the resistance group Hezbollah and Israeli regime. And US President Joe Biden says the deal involves Israeli forces withdrawing from Lebanon over 60 days, with the Lebanese army taking control of the territory in south of the country to ensure Hezbollah does not rebuild forces. This particular ceasefire agreement between the two sides has been welcomed by a number of stakeholders in the Middle East. Also, Hamas, as per the international media, saying, let me quote one excerpt from that, we have informed mediators in Egypt, Qatar and Turkey that Hamas is ready for a ceasefire agreement and a serious deal to exchange prisoners, unquote. Also, as the situation has developed since 7th of October back in 2023 against the innocent people in Gaza, the indiscriminate, relentless and unabated bombardment on the part of the Israeli regime against the innocent people in Gaza has resulted so far in the killing of 44,282 people, with 100,400 4,880 people injured so far. As far as the situation in Lebanon, because of that bombardment on the part of the Israeli regime is concerned, there were 3,823 killings owing to that aggression of Israeli regime, with 15,859 people getting injured. We'll be talking about as to what significance this particular ceasefire agreement does carry. What could be the possible motivations behind Netanyahu agreeing to such a ceasefire with a resistance group Hezbollah. We also know for a fact that just a couple of days before, the International Criminal Court also issued the arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. They were, of course, rejected and termed as being absurd on the part of the Israeli regime. The significance of those arrest warrants also, there was another development as far as the entire globe looking forward for an immediate, unconditional and a permanent ceasefire in Gaza is concerned. There happens to be only one country that has once again vetoed a very important resolution at the United Nations Security Council that called for an immediate, unconditional and a permanent ceasefire, and that country is the United States of America, with its president saying that he'll be making a final push this time around for a ceasefire, and he will hold talks with the mediators including Turkey, Egypt and Qatar. We'll be talking about why, if on the one side the US administration wants to have a final push for a ceasefire as far as the situation in Gaza is concerned, why it continues to veto such resolutions at the United Nations Security Council. This is the fourth time the Biden administration has vetoed such a resolution. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests who are joining us in the studio to discuss all these important aspects. Mr. Rear Admiral retired Faisal Shah, senior analyst. Mr. Shah, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Baker Younis. He's an Arab journalist. Mr. Younis, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Admiral Faisal Shah, when we talk about this particular ceasefire that's been agreed between resistance group Hezbollah and Israeli regime, what possible motivations do you think could have worked as far as Netanyahu is concerned?
Thank you very much for having me here. I think this deal was in the offing. It was coming because post-Israel attack on Iran.
Admiral Shah, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. I guess there is a little bit of problem with the microphone that you're wearing right now. We'll try to check that one. Let me, in the meanwhile, let me go towards Mr. Younis. Mr. Younis, what could be the possible motivations regarding this particular ceasefire agreement between Hezbollah and Israeli regime?
See, the Israeli occupiers, I won't again name them a regime, the Israeli occupiers actually have found themselves in a place that they can't go forward. They are attacking Lebanon, they are attacking Gaza. But what is happening with this attack? It's only civilians got killed. They are unable to defeat Hezbollah practically. They are unable to take lands from Lebanon as they wanted. They are unable also to finish the Gaza war. They are unable to stop Hamas and Al-Jihad and other groups from attacking them. So, and they are still continuing killing the civilians. So see, there is actually a deadlock for the Israeli occupiers. They can't move forward. They are unable to do anything. So the only solution for them to come out with a deal. So this deal now, the Hezbollah deal with Israel, it's not, by the way, it's not a final deal. It's a 2-month deal. Ceasefire is going for 2 months, and if this works fine, then they will extend it. So you can't say that it's deal and it's fine and the war is ended. It's never ended. The war have not ended yet. Hezbollah didn't say that we are surrendering. So which actually Israeli wanted them to say that we are surrendering and that's it. Let's finish Hezbollah and let's occupy the south of Lebanon. This never happened. So Hezbollah is there. The Israeli demands have not been accomplished. Gaza is there. People from Gaza are still fighting the Israeli occupiers. So from all sides, they are actually in a deadlock. They are actually have prisoned themselves with this Netanyahu targets, which is unable to accomplish.
Okay, so when we talk about Hezbollah, after this particular ceasefire, as you mentioned that this lasts for 2 months, right? So do we see Hezbollah going back from the southern part of Lebanon? As per the United Nations Resolution 1701, and President Joe Biden also saying that it is the Lebanese army which is going to take the positions over there in south instead of Hezbollah being stationed there.
So this doesn't mean that the Israelis have won the war again. So if you put the army, the Lebanese army, on the border, so the borders of Lebanon are safe, so it's okay with the Lebanese. So they wanted their land to be safe. Yes, they won't be able now to support the Gaza as they were doing. Maybe this will also affect the Gaza support from Hezbollah, from the Lebanon, but it doesn't mean that Hezbollah are out of the equation. Yes, the Lebanese army will come, and the Lebanese army will protect the land, so the Lebanese land is safe. This is number one. Number two, Hezbollah is remaining. Hezbollah haven't vanished, in this deal. And still, I'm saying this is a 2-month ceasefire. Meanwhile, they have to start another deal with Gaza. So if this goes well with Gaza, and Gaza accepted to release the prisoners, and the Israeli accepted to go out from Gaza, this might go for a long-term ceasefire. Otherwise, Hezbollah will come back, and that's actually what they said. They said that we are still connected with Gaza.
Okay, so when Hezbollah moves away from the southern part of Lebanon, according to 1701, that resolution, Lebanese army takes over that particular position and this particular ceasefire goes on. Do you think it's going to weaken Hezbollah's position in the months ahead?
See, Hezbollah is not such a party which actually looking for, let's say, like a support from other. It's a party or rebels from the place itself, from the Lebanese, from the people who don't want occupiers to take their land. So it never goes weak. So it's part of the national security. So you can't say that Hezbollah will be defeated or Hezbollah will go weak.
Not in terms of defeat. What makes me curious is in terms of logistics, where it is moving from the southern border away, according to that resolution 1701, and the Lebanese army taking over that particular place. Is it going to make them weak as far as logistics is concerned, their positioning is concerned? See,
repositioning won't make them that weak, okay? In a sense that they won't lose their army, they won't lose their men. But yes, they will actually may regroup in a different way. We have the army now in the front line. So Hezbollah, of course, will regroup, because Hezbollah, again, it's a Lebanese asset.
So what is required for this ceasefire to go ahead more than 2 months?
To have a ceasefire in Gaza.
To have a ceasefire in
yes,
Gaza. So this particular,
yes,
the majority of this ceasefire is related to the ceasefire over there.
Yes, according to the Israelis, they say no. We actually have won the war in Lebanon, and now we are going to win the war in Gaza. According to the Lebanese, they say no. This ceasefire goes for a time that to give a place, to give a chance for a ceasefire happens in Gaza. So if it goes fine with Gazans, if it goes fine with Hamas, then
what would be the possible likelihood of that? I'll come back to you, take your deeper understanding regarding that. Admiral Shah, so do you think it's going to, I'll come back to that particular question that I asked you first, that what could be the possible motivation as far as the perspective of Netanyahu is concerned. But when we talk about Hezbollah's position, according to 1701, the resolution of the United Nations, if the Lebanese army is going to take over the positions over there in southern Lebanon, do you think it's going to weaken logistically the position of Hezbollah? And if in future there happens to be a violation on the part of the Israeli regime of this particular ceasefire, would Hezbollah be able to resist in the same fashion as it has been doing up till now?
I think it's not going to weaken Hezbollah that much, because it's going to give them time to regroup. You see, they have been engaged with Israel for the last 14 months and there have been considerable damages on both sides. Although Western media is not reporting the damages on the side of Israel, but it has also been hurt by Hezbollah, Hamas and Houthis and everybody. So I think it is going to give time to both of them. And if you go through the statement of Benjamin Netanyahu, he has stated 3 objectives out of this ceasefire. The number one is that he is going to give respite to his forces. That means his forces have been exhausted They have been engaged, there have been damages. Then he said that I need to replenish. And I need to replenish to focus on Iran, the threat from Iran. So there has been a considerable threat from Iran also. There have been consistent statements from the Iranian leadership that they are preparing to attack on Israel post 26 October attack of Israel on Iran. And actually that situation has hyped the situation, overall situation in Gaza, and that has actually brought the focus of whole world to this region, because now Israel and Iran are in direct confrontation with each other, and that's a very dangerous situation. If Iran attacks Israel further, I think that's going to put not only region but beyond region there will be severe consequences. And the third thing that Benjamin Netanyahu has said, that he wanted to isolate Hamas so that he can now have some respite from Hezbollah side, so he can focus on Hamas, and then he can focus on preparations for war with Iran if that happens. So I think that's that the objective on both sides is to have some break and some respite and some introspection, to have regrouping, replenishment, and energy, and re-energize their forces and replenish their arms and ammunition. If there is a violation, both sides have said that if there is a violation from either side, the ceasefire will not be further accepted. So there is always a likelihood that if there is a violation from any side, the war might erupt again in southern Lebanon.
Right, we are honored to have been joined by another participant in the show. On Skype, Dr. Ahmed Zaki is Middle East Affairs expert. Dr. Zaki, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. As per your understanding, what could be the motivations from both the sides, Hezbollah as well as the Israeli regime, when it comes to agreement of this particular ceasefire for the next 2 months? And how positive are you? Is it going to hold for 2 months, or could there be a possibility of any sort of a violation from either side?
Thank you for having me. As you know, that the ceasefire came at the time that Israel is facing a lot of pressure from American government administration, particularly the new government which is about to take over. There is no clear guarantee from the Trump administration, which they are against a total war, even though they are pro-Israeli, but they don't want to spend too much money on American money on Israeli wars, which they know that it could not bring any positive results, particularly for Americans. So they feel the pressure from the coming Trump administration. On the other hand, the Hezbollah, which was fighting the southern part of Lebanon against Israel, they never have been diminished as Israel has claimed in the beginning of their offense in Lebanon. So the goal of Israel looks that it cannot reach before the Trump administration take over the administration. So it's quite difficult for Israel to take this decision at this time. They don't have any alternative policy. Otherwise, they should have to face the consequences from both Americans and the Lebanese fighters. So because Lebanese fighters, they were expecting that they are going to complete this war within a few weeks, that as Benjamin Netanyahu have declared in his televised address into the Israeli nation, that he said it will not take us more than a couple of weeks, that we are going to dismantle a complete capability of the Hezbollah rocket attacks on Israel. But that did not happen till today. The rockets are hitting the Tel Aviv, and they are targeting Haifa, and that was not the expectation of the Israeli army, the resistance which they face from the Hezbollah side. On the other hand, Lebanon, which is kind of an independent state, they are putting a lot of pressure through the Arab friends in American interest, but they're saying if Palestine is not recognized, but Lebanon is an independent country and recognized that Israel cannot do whatever they want, ignoring by the international rules and regulations. Somehow, Israel never care about the international law and regulations, but what all they care is the American help, which have no conditions. And at this time, it looks like the Trump administration will take the side of Israel, but they will not give too much money that would have no accountability, like what Biden administration used to do.
So, Dr. Zaki, what I understand from your take is that the primary motivation as far as Netanyahu's perspective to reach this particular ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah is because of the anticipation of that particular pressure that is going to come with the new administration taking power there in the United States of America. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. That's because not only the Trump administration, but Trump administration mostly they are focusing for generating billions of dollars in Middle East, which not only because of war, but because he wants to make a close relationship with Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and the rich Arab countries, which are very against this war that Israel is doing against Lebanon, not what they are doing against the Hamas, because Hamas is not an ally of Arab nations, but Lebanon is an ally of Arab nations. So it's kind of a very difficult position for Israel to choose whether they have to support, whether they get the support they want from administration of Trump or not, because the administration of Trump, even if they are going to give Israel a bill, they need also a feedback on a result on that. And it's not looking like that Israel
do you see, I seek your pardon for the interjection, from here onwards, if this is an anticipatory move owing to that very pressure that is going to come with the new administration taking power there in the United States of America. So if a ceasefire agreement has been reached with resistance group Hezbollah on this particular front of Lebanon, what about that possible ceasefire over there in Gaza? How likely that one is if this particular motivation, we consider this particular motivation as a constant?
Definitely Hezbollah, which looks now they are getting the upper hand against Israel because Israel accepted the ceasefire, which they never accepted against the Hamas and Gaza. Now it looks like that they have to dictate their terms and conditions on this negotiation, and that American administration is going down by the demand of the Hezbollah. So Hezbollah first demand from the first day they started is that the humanitarian assistance should have to be allowed on Gaza, and the ceasefire should have to be happen so that the exchange of prisoners of war could take place. And this is where the Netanyahu is skeptical. They said even if you listen the last addressing of the American Foreign Secretary, he said that Hamas is not responding for a couple of weeks. So who we are going to negotiate with? But this time it looks like they are going to sit down with Hamas too after this negotiation, and it will be a win for resistance groups.
Okay, so Dr. Zaki, one last question. As far as there's been an important development as far as the International Criminal Court is concerned, the issuance of the warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you think that particular factor also played a part in order to push Netanyahu to think differently and perhaps go for a ceasefire agreement?
It's going to affect, but in this particular agreement, it's not been because of that pressure. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to lose the support of the Israeli on the ground, and if this ceasefire takes place, the second phase of the war in Gaza should have to be addressed directly with full diplomatic pressure from the international community on Israel, and the case of ICC is going to put a lot of pressure on Israeli administration, because most of the European countries, particularly the Scandinavian countries, they accepted that we are going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu or his former Secretary of Defense is going to arrive in their country. They are going to arrest, and that's going to kind of creating a clash between America and their allies in Europe, because Americans are blindly supporting Israel with no conditions or no strings attached, and their help of coming for the
supporting Israelis. Dr. Zaki, already I said that would be the last question, but here is very important part of what Joe Biden has said, that over the coming days, the United States will make another push with Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and others to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza with the hostages released and an end to the war without Hamas in power. Now, a final push the Biden administration says it will be making as far as the ceasefire in Gaza is concerned. On the contrary, we have seen it has vetoed for the fourth time any resolution that has been brought at the United Nations Security Council that asked for an immediate, unconditional and a permanent ceasefire there. Why so?
Because Biden is a long-standing supporter of Israel. He wants to make in his last mark on Middle East, where like he's going to show that he's the man who bring peace for Israel, and Israel should have to win without the influence of Hamas. But that is not going to happen. It's not going to be likely. On the other hand, this option have been raised by earlier Turkish administration that Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he said, instead of Hamas, we can take care of the Hamas if you are going to allow the international peacekeepers mission should have to take control of Gaza, and the UN administration will have to be installed over there, but in the condition that Israel should have to agree that the two-state solution comes from their side, and the side of the Palestinians will be taken care by the UN peacekeeping missions, and that Israel will never accept that. If that they accept it right now, that means the total victory for the Palestinian and resistance, and the total defeat for the Israel, which I don't think that Israeli administration currently is ready to accept that.
Dr. Ahmed Zaki, Middle East affairs expert, thank you very much for joining at Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Admiral Shah, Dr. Zaki is of the view that primary motivation as far as Netanyahu's perspective in reaching this particular ceasefire agreement is that anticipation of that particular pressure that is going to come from the Donald Trump's administration once it takes over. How do you see that particular view?
I think if you see it through, this prism that Benjamin Netanyahu was preparing for Mr. Trump to come to the office, and in preparation to that, he's doing all those that Mr. Trump would appreciate. We must remember that this deal was brokered by current US administration, and current US administration is of Democrats, Mr. Biden, and they are not supposed to take steps which are going to help President Trump when he comes to the office. So I actually don't think it that way. I feel that it is a sign of weakness on part of Israel that it has entered into a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah, and I'm hopeful that it is going to have ceasefire agreement with Hamas also, and it is and the situation overall in Middle East between Iran and Israel is also going to be dissipated. And post 26 October attacks of Israel, I have been saying that this is the most ripe time to actually stop Gaza conflict, because so far Israel was in conflict with resistance movements, but now the two kingpins in Middle East, who both have the capability as well as the intent to use that capability, and they have manifested it many times, are in direct conflict with each other. So along with the resistance movements, if this also happens, I think there are too many fronts for Israel that Israel would not like to open, and this is also very vividly stated by
in your earlier take,
Benjamin
you said
Netanyahu.
that it is because of that particular respite Netanyahu wants to give to his forces. He wants replenishment as well, focusing on Iran and Hamas. So that he's going to shift his focus from Hezbollah towards Hamas and Iran. So what about the possibility of any ceasefire agreement when you talk about the situation in Gaza is concerned? We have seen, as the international media is reporting, an important statement by one of the senior leaders of the resistance group Hamas, that we have informed mediators in Egypt, Qatar and Turkey that Hamas is ready for a ceasefire agreement and a serious deal to exchange prisoners.
Yes, you're right. And you see, there have been voices from inside Israel also. Since January, his military commanders have been telling Netanyahu that we have achieved all our objectives and we must not spread this war more. But this war actually has become the war of Netanyahu. It is no more an ideological war or for some territorial dispute. It has a great political stake for Netanyahu, and he wants to continue with it. But but the strength is waning. You see, Israel has had considerable damage in terms of men, material and economy, and had US and allies not been standing beside Israel, I think it would have been very, very difficult Israel to continue with this war for the last 14 months. And now another front being opened with Iran, I think that's not cost effective, that's not affordable for Israel at all. So I think this is the time when things will move towards a stopping of Gaza conflict altogether.
Okay, so Mr. Younis, now, but looking at the statement from one of the senior officials of Hamas, how sooner and how likely is a ceasefire? Or do you also think that a ceasefire on the front of Lebanon is actually aimed and intended by Netanyahu to focus his energies towards Gaza?
You see, Netanyahu is losing the war. You have to understand that it's not something in his hand. He have no more options. He have his, one option, that he have to start a war against Hamas and eliminate Hamas, have a war against Hezbollah and eliminate Hezbollah. This never happened, and this will never happen. See, occupiers can't remove the whole, population. You are an occupier. You are not the real owner of this land. You stay 70 years, you stay 100 years, you will be removed. And that's what Netanyahu have said. He said that this war is a war of existence. They want to exist. They are afraid that this Israel, so-called Israel state, which is actually, I name it, the occupier's state, which is not a Israeli state, and he is not a prime minister, he's a prime occupier. These occupiers understand that this is not their land. You see, how many Israelis have left Israel so far? It's around 500,000 people have left already. It's around, maybe more than, like 600,000 Israelis have already left Israel, and they're not willing to come back again to this land because they say, this is not our land. Why should we face all this war? And yes, we face this war because this is our land. So we are defending our land. This is not something that, a negotiation will resolve it. It's not something a ceasefire will resolve it. This also will continue. This generation, the coming generation, the other coming generation, because you have to understand, we are dealing with occupiers. We are not dealing with owners of this land. So Netanyahu himself said that this is an existence. If we don't win this war, we will not exist. And this, it seems very clear, they are not winning this war. So they came to this deal. They wanted this deal. They have actually
What about the deal with Hamas or there in Gaza?
Say again?
What about a possible deal?
See, Hamas have said it's war. It's again and again they have said their condition. All the Israeli troops have to go out from Gaza. Then we will, and they have to allow the rebuild of Gaza. Then we will think about the releasing the prisoners, and that's how the ceasefire can start.
Rebuilding.
But asking a ceasefire in this situation, it's not allowed. They said no. How can we give a ceasefire? You are attacking us. You are attacking the civilians. You are occupying our lands. Your troops are on the doors. So which kind of ceasefire it can happen? No. If the Israeli troops go out totally from all Gaza, start the rebuilding of Gaza, and
who is going to rebuild Gaza?
The Gazans themselves. The Gazans themselves. They will take support from the international community. Have to support
the
them.
kind of scale, the damage and the destruction that has been accrued so far because of this unabated Israeli bombardment. Do you think Gazans would be in a position by themselves to rebuild and reconstruct Gaza without any international help?
Okay, international help have to be there. You see, most of the attacks which happened from the Israeli troops on the what so-called the United Nations camps. So we have Khan Yunis camp, we have Nusayrat camp. These actually are places where Palestinian people have come under the United Nations protection. So these places, all these places are protected by the United Nations, which they have never given this protection, and so they never respected this. And they have also even recently they have asked the UNRWA to shut down. So which means they are not only killing or attacking the Palestinians, they are actually also removing all the rules and all the respect for the United Nations and their programs inside Gaza. So yes, the United Nations have to come back, the international support have to come to Gaza, then Gaza will be rebuilt. Why not?
Okay, so ICC has issued the arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu. It says that it has the reasonable grounds to believe Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant were criminally responsible for acts including murder, persecution and starvation of a weapon of war. As a part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza. Do you think it carries any sort of a significance because it was rejected again by the Israeli regime, the high-ranking officials over there? They termed it an absurd sort of an action on the part of ICC. Do you think it carries any sort of a weight?
See, the ICC, the existence of the ICC is for what? Is for such situations. They have to go up after those criminals. So if they don't do their work, they're losing their, the reason of their existence. So yes, they have to work, but how effective it is for against Netanyahu? No, I don't think it will be effective. Do not ever capture him, put him in jail. This will never happen. Number one. Number two, as a Palestinian or as an Arab or as a Muslim, do you think that what we are waiting ICC to do something? No, it's not. We are not. Our target is not Netanyahu. Our target is to remove the occupiers from the land, retrieve the whole Palestine, not only Gaza. So this is our target. This is our aim, not only to come after Netanyahu. So there is a different. If they want the ICC, which actually they're taking salary, they're taking money, and
but there has to be a precedence. There has to be a precedence or an example set. You're of the view that you're not the Gazans. The people over there are not against Netanyahu individually. They are against illegal occupiers. But if any sort of an action based on the legal grounds or according to these warrants happen against Netanyahu for the war crimes and crimes against humanity, the kind of sufferings the Gazans had to endure over the last, since 7th of October 2023, don't you think that's going to be a step in the right direction, and that there's going to be a precedence that is going to be set after it?
It is a step in the right direction, but it's not since 2023. It is since Palestine got occupied, since 75 years. So all those people have to be punished, not only Netanyahu. That's what I'm saying. Not only Netanyahu, we're not only after Netanyahu, we're after all the occupiers.
Admiral Shah, it has to start from somewhere. Is of the view that since that particular illegal occupation took place, from that very inception, everybody who was involved in this particular crime against the people in Gaza has to be brought to accountability. What about starting with Netanyahu, and how significant are these arrest warrants of the International Criminal Court?
I think these are significant enough to, in fact, establish the fact that he has committed war crimes. He has committed crimes against the humanity. You see, Gaza conflict has done, the only good thing that has come out of this conflict is that not only Muslim and Arab countries, but many countries around the world are on the same page that this is a genocide going on against Palestinians. And ICC's verdict has actually reiterated that. It has established that fact that he has committed these crimes. So this is a significant thing. Israel is not signatory to ICC. US is not signatory to ICC. So Netanyahu, being Prime Minister of Israel, does not have much discomfort with this because he would only like to travel to US and no other country. And there he cannot be arrested. UK has said that if he enters UK, we will arrest him because UK is member of ICC. But these orders are not going to be retrieved. He remains Prime Minister or not. So even after not having been Prime Minister, having been removed as Prime Minister, this verdict will stay with Netanyahu for lifetime.
So if, as per your understanding, if it's not going to bring any sort of discomfort to Netanyahu, so why Israeli regime has termed this particular issuance of warrants as being shameful and absurd?
Actually, you see, they have been denying all the international legislations, all the claims, all the calls by international organizations. They have, banned UN Secretary General. They have denied UN any access. The only UN agency, UNRWA, was working in Israel and Palestine for last so many decades. They have actually banned that also. So they have been against all these international organizations. So they had to say this about this also, but it has some consequences. And the consequences are these are not against Prime Minister of Israel. It is against Benjamin Netanyahu, who remains Prime Minister or not. This verdict will remain with him, and for the lifetime. So it will restrict his movement for the lifetime.
Okay, so One last question, very important thing. The approach of the Biden administration. Again, President Biden saying that he's going to make a final push by talking with Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and other to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. We've seen most recently the Biden administration has once again vetoed a UN Security Council resolution. This is the fourth time they vetoed this particular resolution. So what intentions should we believe, or the world should actually believe? A final push for a ceasefire, or vetoing that particular resolution at the UNSC when 15 of the UNSC members go in the favor of that, and you happen to be the only country that vetoes it?
Yeah, I think the main objective of US is to save the region from further catastrophe, and a broader catastrophe and destruction can happen if Israel and Iran come in direct conflict once again. So I think US would like to avoid that situation at any cost. But as far as this Gaza conflict and atrocities of Israel over Palestinians are concerned, I think US is not much interested in that. But if in saving the region from further catastrophe, this step becomes important, then certainly US will be interested in stopping Gaza conflict also.
Right. Mr. Younis, your closing comments as to how do you weigh and compare this particular intention of a final push by President Joe Biden for a ceasefire in Gaza, and on the other vetoing that UNSC resolution, and that happens to be the fourth time that they vetoed that.
It goes very normal with the US strategy, because the US never wanted a ceasefire in Gaza in a way that it shows the Palestinians win the war. They want a ceasefire in Gaza in which the Palestinians lose the war and give the so-called prisoners to the Israeli and also surrender Hamas weapons. So this kind of ceasefire America wants. They never want a ceasefire in which the civilians of Gaza stop not being killed. So that's why I think there's no difference. US will go in this direction. Palestinians have to lose the war. Palestinians have to surrender their weapons, and Palestinians have to release their prisoners. Whatever happens then to the Palestinians, that's what the US want actually.
Mr. Baker Younis, Arab journalist, thank you very much for taking time out. Admiral, retired Faisal Shah, senior analyst, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.